Welcome back to Everything Wrong With, a review series I do here on Destructoid where I front load the video with all of my gripes and negative thoughts on a video game, and then afterwards share some positive feelings on the game. Unfortunately today there won't be a lot of positives because I'm of course talking about Redfall. I have to talk about the marketing of Redfall because I'm gonna be honest, it's a little slimy, it's a little icky. Microsoft knew what they were doing. If you look at the trailers for Redfall, they'll show you this beautiful animation of a character talking to the camera, giving the character a bunch of personality, making it seem like this is a very story-focused or at least character-driven action game. That's not the case. Not the case at all. The cutscenes in Redfall are still images, and it's about the furthest thing from feeling AAA in any aspect. The game's cutscenes are ridiculous, but of course that's not the only thing they basically lied about. In all the marketing, aside from the game's final few weeks before launch, the game's gameplay was 60 frames per second. And as you know now, it's 30 frames. To put it all out on the table, you guys, I'm not a very big Far Cry fan, I'm not a huge Left 4 Dead fan, and those styles of video games are obviously what inspired Redfall, but unfortunately, any elements from those games that those games do right, Redfall just didn't really hit the mark on any of them. Let's talk about where Arcane usually thrives, which is enemy AI, level design, and intricate combat. And unfortunately, these problems in Redfall are the most disappointing. Having just beaten Deathloop earlier this year and really enjoying the level design and layout of that world, jumping into Redfall, I was really expecting more of the same. Unfortunately, I got some red flags pretty early on. Let me paint you a little picture. The game opens up and immediately I'm thinking, okay, these graphics aren't great, but they still have that stylistic Arcane look to them, which I'm totally fine with. And then I see a dead NPC on the ground, and I immediately thought, okay, this doesn't really look good. Like, these graphics for these character models, at least this one laying on the ground, is terrible. I kid you not. Probably 5 minutes later, I walk into another room. The exact same dead NPC is on the ground. And the very beginning of the game. I don't know if the dead NPCs are randomly generated, so maybe it's different each time, but for me, I got the same dead person on the ground, like 20 feet apart from each other. And I was just like, okay, that's really strange, but it's not gonna get worse, right? It couldn't get worse. This is Arcane we're talking about. And then I get to the first encounter where I'm going to start killing people. There was a sneaking past people section, which honestly also felt pretty broken. They wouldn't spot me whenever I thought they should have, and then they would whenever I thought they shouldn't have. The AI in general is just so bad, like just blatantly obvious right in the beginning of the game when you're sneaking past a few enemies that something feels off. But that's not the end of it. In the next section, I see that there's enemies around and all that stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to sneak through here. I'm gonna go up into this section. I see a yellow pipe going up the building, and typically nowadays, if you see yellow, that means you can climb it. And you know, this is Arcane, so you gotta assume there's some type of level design going on in this area where I can sneak through here and take these enemies out. Unfortunately, no. I walk up to the thing, I try and jump up on it, I'm like, oh, I guess I can't climb this. I'm looking around the building like, okay, can I sneak anywhere? Can I do anything? But no, pretty much my only choice was to walk up on these guys and just start shooting them. And then after I killed those enemies, while I was disappointed in the level design of the area, it was like, okay, I'm shooting people. This is cool. I go into the fire section. That's a hub area, somewhere where you'll repeatedly be throughout the game. And I look at the ground. And what do I see but a bunch of unfinished textures? And I don't know if they just said, screw it, we're not going to finish these textures, or if the game just wasn't loading in. But I looked around this firehouse everywhere and saw terrible textures, like ugly, and the game isn't even ugly all the time. It's actually kind of pretty sometimes. But then you get to these spots throughout this game that are just so jarring. They are so ugly that I cannot believe that this game is even out right now. And Phil Spencer just put out an interview basically saying that we know the technical problems, but we honestly didn't believe those technical issues would have really changed the reception of the game. That's honestly what he said. It sounds crazy, but... And maybe he's right, because the fundamental issues of Redfall so far aren't really the graphics. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's weird that it looks bad in so many areas and that textures just randomly don't load in, but the problem is the moment-to-moment gameplay. It just feels bland. The open world is pretty pointless. This should have just been a linear single-player shooter. I don't know why these companies are like, we gotta make an open world, we gotta make it co-op. Just imagine if Redfall, strip out all the RPG elements, bring in something else, guns you pick up like a freaking Call of Duty campaign. I would imagine this goes better than how it turned out. A game that fits somewhere between a Far Cry campaign and a live service game. And I didn't even really talk about the 30 frames per second. A first-person shooter at 30 frames per second, I'm not even like a person who really cares about FPS, but a first-person shooter at 30 frames per second, oh my god. It is not good. I know some people can't notice the difference. I don't know how. Now I think you're crazy. I used to be one of you. But when I see that at first person at 30 frames, I'm just like, no way in hell. Puke-inducing. So I did the best I could to make it playable for me, but it doesn't feel good to play. And I don't know if it has something to do with the always online element, but I feel like there's some sort of delay input. Like, input delay. Like, I'm hitting right on the right stick, and there's just like a tiny little delay. I don't know, like, what's up with that. And especially in the menus, you can really notice in the menus, if you click down on the D-pad, like half a second later, it'll move down. And I just feel like it has something to do with the online component. Why is it always online? I have no freaking idea. There's no way to pause the game either, so that's great. That's just so convenient to play this game in single player. It's just annoying. I have more complaints. This video is already pretty long, though, so if you made it this far, thanks so much for checking out Everything Wrong With. I don't really have a lot of positives to say. I think the world is cool. I think some of the character designs look pretty cool. The opening section with the waterfall, or with the wave, that was really cool. Did I call it a waterfall earlier? I might have. Anyway, some of the elements of Redfall are cool, and I want to be excited about a new IP, but Redfall just wasn't it. And I think Xbox knew that, and I think they were just like, we got to get this out the door. We got to get Arcane on whatever else they're doing next, which I hope is a Fallout game, because they worked on 76 a little bit. Maybe they could actually make a good Fallout game now. I trust Arcane, but something went wrong with this production, and that's pretty unfortunate. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. I will talk to you guys next time. See ya.